Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be going over the effects of malnutrition on the immune system. So we're just going to start off with some basic term definitions. Malnutrition is defined as deficiencies, excess, or imbalances in a person's intake of energy and or nutrients. So this can be twofold. This can be either an excess of consumption or a deficiency, as it says. That either means we're getting too much nutrients that leads to certain diseases, or too little nutrients that does not fuel the body correctly, resulting in increased vulnerability to diseases. So, and again, in this one, we're going to be focusing more so on immune diseases and negative immune effects. Immune dysfunction is defined as an occurrence when a part of the immune system is missing or not working properly. Today we're going to be going over two subsections of the immune system, and then we're going to be looking at gut immunity as well. So we're going to be taking a look at that shortly. And then these are the two that we're going to be going over. To start, we're going to be going over innate immune function, which is a part of the immune system that develops from birth, right? So this is, the part of it that we have coming up as a newborn. And then the adaptive immune function as well. This will be, I believe, the third slide or the fourth slide. And it'll be the part of the immune system that deals with combating foreign substances or microorganisms. So that's the part that we kind of adapt as we go through life. And we build that defense up and the ability to defend against foreign attackers in that regard. So the last two that we're going to go over are environmental enteric dysfunction, which is the abnormality of gut structure and function among individuals inhabiting impoverished conditions. So we're going to take a look at how malnutrition impacts, number one, the likelihood of EED. That's the acronym, or that acronym, excuse me. That's the condensed version of that very long term, right? So we're going to take a look at how malnutrition affects the likelihood of that, and then the effects of that on the individual. And then the last but not least, we're going to be looking at the concept of phenotypic plasticity. And that really is the idea that the body is functionally able to allow organisms to produce alternative phenotypes in response to changing conditions. We're going to look at the immunity side of this phenotypical response. So again, we're going to first start off with defects caused in innate immune function. Each of these bullets that we're going to go over have are based on studies, and so I'll link the studies below each of the bullets. First, we're going to go over a study. We're looking at the effects on impaired epithelial barrier function. Here we have just a diagram of what the normal function is and should be, and here we kind of get conceptually understand what that's about, right? Acting as a barrier to keep inner and outer substances. So so we're going to look at a study done with children in Lusaka, and essentially what happened was we compared epithelial surfaces between children with severe acute malnutrition and healthy adults. And what they found was that the epithelial surface was actually reduced in the children with the severe acute malnutrition. And really what they also found was that bacterial translocation was higher in the children with severe acute malnutrition than in the healthy adults that did not have the malnutrition effects. So really what this does is it conveys how malnutrition can cause an inability to correctly regulate substances on an epithelial basis, right? Because the epithelial barrier is unable to regulate and stop the invasion of pathogenic bacteria. And again, that goes back to the diagram. That's why we have a diagram here, so we can kind of get an idea of what it's supposed to be doing, and the effect of malnutrition stopping that function and not allowing that to happen. The second effect is there are fewer circulating dendritic cells, and this was taken from a study involving children, again, with severe acute malnutrition in Zambia. And essentially what they observed was that these children had low numbers of myeloid dendritic cells, and additionally, they observed that to reduce the dendritic cell count, that was correlated with the malnutrition effects that these children had, right? And it further impaired their ability to prime virus-specific T cells in response to hepatitis B vaccination. vaccination, for example. And obviously this is very harmful because it impairs the immune system's ability to combat foreign bodies, putting them at higher risk of mortality, right, for certain viruses. And then the last but not least, we have the reduced complement proteins. So down below, we have just an idea right here of, here we go, of kind of the structure, the purpose of the complement system and complement proteins. And what we actually found out was that this was caused by an inability for protein synthesis and changes in plasma levels. And it actually makes individuals more susceptible to infection in undernourished individuals. So now we're going to go over to the adaptive immune function, right? I said that it was a twofold effect. So to start off, we're going to go over how it reduces levels of soluble IgA or immunoglobulin. So here we have a diagram, which is the basic structure. And this was a study where mice were fed isocaloric diets containing different percentages of protein, with some of the mice actually being fed a protein deficient diet. And total IgA concentrations was reduced at 6 to 8 weeks. And what we found was that the IgA PCF response significantly reduced in the group that was given 2% protein in their diets. So essentially what this means that protein deficient forms of malnutrition resulted in an impaired IgA response to antigens found in the mucosa. And so obviously that's very harmful when the immunoglobulin A is not able to conduct its function. The second one that we want to go over is lymphoid organ atrophy. So it was a study conducted on mice with short-term caloric restriction, and it actually found to have lowered lymphocyte cells in various lymphoid tissues. And we have the diagram in black and white down below showing, how those numbers were actually lowered in the lymphoid tissues. And the last one we want to go over is fewer circulating B cells. So the study was taken that specifically looked at undernutrition through the lens and classification of BMI, or body mass index. So what they found out was that if undernutrition had an effect on immune cells existing in the latent Mycobacterium tuberculosis infection, and they found that low body mass index individuals showed a reduced frequency of B cell subsets, as well as plasma cells. So the study was able to draw a positive correlation between undernutrition and the tuberculosis infection and B cell count. So it actually shows how this undernutrition was able to contribute to fewer circulating B cells, which we can see in the bottom left corner over here. So going over to the effects on gut immune response. So this is just, again, like I said, we're done with the twofold analysis, and now we're going to go over, in general, what does this have to do with gut immunity. So here we have, again, a diagram just about the healthy gut function and the leaky gut function. Again, it's that barrier, concept or conceptual idea. And so we're going to go over how healthy gut function requires a large surface area for nutrient absorption. And what actually ends up happening is that in malnourished individuals, this is actually severely impaired. So that sets up conditions that are primed to lead to EED, right? So, and one of the most, standoutish effects that we see in this EED category is that an abnormal intestinal permeability that's associated with impaired growth and development. So essentially what we're seeing is that the intestinal permeability, it's not able to be regulated the correct way. So certain substances are getting through that should not be getting through, or certain substances are getting through in excess or in a deficiency that should not be getting through in an excess or deficiency. And here we can actually see a chart that shows how, the malnutrition ratio is affecting Gambian infants associated with small intestinal barrier function. So that's also really important when we're talking about the types of immunity that's being affected here. And then last but not least, how do these effects implicate the concept of phenotypic plasticity? So as we discussed prior, phenotypic plasticity, again, is the ability or the concept that the body has the ability to find alternate pathways, right? When one pathway gets shut down, we can, adapt to that. And so, we're going to go over a case study that induced vitamin A deficiency in mice, right? And so essentially, and that's what this red circle is here, they noticed that they exhibited a noticeable reduction in ILC3 and antibacterial responses. But then what they also found was that they exhibited a noticeable increase in the production of ILC2, along with resistance to nematode infections. So again, right here, this is kind of like what we're focusing on in addition to all these other graphs that kind of communicate that same information. But again, it supports the model of phenotypic plasticity because this is a case where, again, the body is not only accommodating, but adapting and actually producing a strong effect and defense to the deficiency, in this case, vitamin A deficiency, by finding alternative pathways to combat that deficiency. So like I said, the ILC3s and antibacterial responses that were shut down, the body found another way. And that was in route of increasing production of ILC2 along with the resistance to nematode infection. So I thank all of you for your time. I thank all of you for checking out this presentation on how malnutrition, impacts the immune system. It's, two very important concepts that, research is always looking at it. And, we're going to get more information, obviously, as technology evolves, as the investigations advance. So, it's a really interesting concept. And I thank all of you for sharing your time and following along.